The alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Go to the church, though.
Tawali man, what's up?
Man, can you imagine people just dump everywhere? Someone drinks water and throws the bottle wherever.
Come on, Rogers. What else do you expect people to do with an empty bottle?
Simanya now, did you know that plastics take at least 450 years to decompose?
What? That's a long time.
Exactly. Because plastics are made out of a lightweight and flexible material that doesn't decompose easily. And plastics everywhere in the environment cause plastic pollution.
What is plastic pollution now?
It is the accumulation of plastic waste in the environment, like bottles, polythene bags, straws. All of these contribute to plastic pollution.
I have been using them without knowing their effect.
Yeah, a lot of people have. Plastics are a danger to the ecosystem, both on land and in water.
So how can we overcome this problem? Is there something we can do?
Oh yes, we can reduce by minimizing the use of plastics, reuse by repurposing them, or recycle by collecting and processing them into new products.
Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change themselves for the world.
How about we change our habits for the world?
And it starts with me and you.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk. The alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening. I welcome you all to today's edition of the Hotline Show. My name is Roger Stoyawe, and I have a humbling privilege myself to be able to be a part of this conversation, to steer this conversation at that with Honorable. Honorable, yes.
Mr.
We agreed that we're going to do Honorable for now. You are whole party president. So, Honorable Joseph Ochieno, who is a leader in the Uganda People's Congress, is also a political economist and an international journalist at that. So he's experienced in most of these things. And so we're going to be having a discussion around the preparedness of the opposition for the national leadership should any of that chance present itself as we stand right now. And you look at how it's working and the divide in most of the political parties, is the opposition itself ready for the leadership as it claims? Everyone is speaking, we are removing a dictator, we want to remove a dictator. And he has done a lot of more harm than good, as he has repeatedly said it in most of the shows that we've had here. Is the opposition itself ready? So that is going to be the conversation for the day. My name is Roger Stoyawe, and I think we're going to start off from there, sir. Mm-hmm. Just, first of all, the current events that have happened in some of the opposition parties, how do you see any of that speak to how you're ready as the opposition for leadership, as you claim?
No, thank you very much for having me. I am very tired. I have just returned from Arua this morning. I was privileged on Saturday to be part of possibly the largest gathering of uncontrolled voluntary people turning up for a funeral which had nothing to do with the NRA and your money railing people into trucks. West Nile lost possibly the leading until recently political heavyweight. From a UPC perspective, it was Vice President Peter Olobiri. That is Caleb Tatia Akamuri. Fantastic guy. I was privileged to know him and to work with him. That was a big event on Saturday. What was particularly exciting about that was the praises and accolades presented and showered onto him, his role in leading agricultural reform, agriculture, enabling young people, involvement in communities, in education, in every aspect of life, in West Nile, particularly in and around Arua. That funeral saw cross-section of political leaders. I think nearly all, most of the legislators from West Nile were in attendance, and from across the political divide. all very positive messages from across. I think it was humbling in terms of reflection. If only out of that is how we conducted our politics. You can imagine, of course, most of the legislators stand up there were NRM, and as I said, it was quite a message and a lesson, particularly for younger people, that we should know that what happens in 70 years' time or 80 years' time when our time comes, what will be said on our final days, and basically which will have been achieved in our names. But beyond that, I am delighted that at 71, Caleb, who happens to have been a Mwiri Obi, not surprisingly, has run his race and has left a fantastic legacy. I don't know how many people will pick it up from there. And again, almost every speaker after speaker was talking about the void and whether or not anybody would easily be able to pick from him, including being able to engage politically, but also politics of diversity. So that said, as I met with my other colleagues from UPC, Jim McKenna was there, other younger leaders were there, but particularly, of course, our last elected President Olara Tunu was there, gave a fantastic non-partisan speech.
Before they whipped him out of office.
He is our last elected president without contest. And I am delighted that my political assistant was telling me, actually this morning, how privileged she was to have been in the same tent with Olara. But the emphasis was about the quality of leadership that UPC produces, and hence then the unfortunate mess in which we now end up where we are and we're not able to move. And they're asking on the question of whether or not opposition is ready for the future. Then I see the West that we have on the table, the crop of leadership, the crop of material, the crop of ideals and ideas, and yet we're not able to translate that into a coherent message and content as Uganda People's Congress to help lead the rest of the democratic opposition to be able to then go ahead and push NRM and to be able then to push the rest of the Republic of Uganda to enable a post-Museveni Uganda. So that's sort of really unfortunate. That said then is whether or not we are ready. When I see what happened in Arua, and I see some of my colleagues, I get very disappointed and sometimes very itching, including when you see some people come and making very nice speeches, but they're being very hypocritical because, as I said, NRM money has eaten into even Uganda People's Congress. And then sometimes a bit of lies. And in there you find some very decent people, but you know that there are people who are able to break UPC constitution, and you ask that, I didn't know, Ochieno, that things like breaking constitutions would be UPC matters, because these are things that would normally blame on NRM. But
I wanted to ask you one thing just about that one. Does it mean that every single time an opposition player, and most of them are strongholds, every time they play fall and do wrong things, should it be faulted on the NRM and said, are we always going to be scapegoating the NRM for disturbing the opposition parties? Because that seems to be the trend in most of the countries.
Not at all, and I don't think I've suggested that thus far in my presentation. The fact that I refer to people with money and NRM things is a matter of fact. So it's not about blame, but about what other people do as opposition, I don't know. I have been on your program again and again and again and faulted members of Uganda People's Congress on many issues. In fact, I was going to build onto this because I was building that argument to say that when I see then the quality of material that we've got, the opportunity that we've got, the goodwill that we've got, just before my speech, I got somebody who came to me and is now a pending member of Uganda People's Congress. After my speech, I got 3 people, including one person whose contacts we sort of lost, and my assistant wasn't near. During the meal before leaving the site, I got a fantastic parliamentary candidate, quality parliamentary material, a person joining Uganda People's Congress. In my hotel at night, I got a phone call, and I've got almost a a futuristic parliamentary candidate material for Uganda People's Congress membership. So we've got a huge amount of opportunities. And the reason is, not only was Caleb's, although a retiring event, because he breathed his last and we're burying him, but rather the testimonies were a manifestation of the power of UPC of the past, UPC of today's potential as built together, but UPC of hope in the future, that any young leaders who emerge today and young people who join Uganda People's Congress under hopefully new, decent and coherent leadership is able to provide not only for this party but for this country. There was almost total consensus, although NRA guys tried very hard to count. Of course, there was there. The chief person was an NRA minister, so because of protocol, he spoke last. A very cheeky guy, actually, very arrogant, but I will not go into that. Even told some lies and was trying to rub salt on an incident he allegedly had in June 1979, about what happened to him as a young person at the time, sort of seemingly to suggest UPC. And I had to remind him that actually, no, in 1979 June, UPC was not in power. In 1979 was an ULF administration in which Mr. Museveni was actually very actively the defense minister. But anyway, so that's neither here nor there. But no, point here is that we have the capacity as Uganda People's Congress to be a government ready tomorrow to run this country. In my speech, I was rudely interrupted towards my 8th to 9th minute, because I don't think I completed the 10th minute that had been given. But some people here, I think they're being jealous. I wanted to say, because the district chairperson was extremely generous to Kamure, and one of the things I wanted to say was that, Obana chairman, and I can repeat that, Obana chairman, just imagine that Kamure was a chairman of this district for 10 months. Just imagine that Kamure was a minister for agriculture in this country for 4 years. Okay, granted, imagine that Kamure was president of this republic for 4 years, not one term, just 4 years. This country would be different, based on the things that were being talked about and based on the things that was talked about. I'm trying to tell you that the issue in this country is not from a UPC's perspective, and I'm confident that other political parties should be able to also have a reasonable capacity. But I'm speaking as UPC. The issue for us is not being able to wake up tomorrow and run with this country and lead it and govern it very well for all the citizens of this country. The problem is, one, the fact that the dining table is clouded, and then two, at the moment, as I said, we generally do not have a clear leader. That's our biggest challenge. It is urgent that we resolve the leadership of the party. As I said, I hope I have raised my hand recently with the judiciary. I hope that my matter will be expedited. It's already taken too long. So I hope our matter is able to be resolved soon, so that we're able to have our leadership resolved, so that justice is done to Uganda People's Congress and the citizens of this country. There are millions of Ugandans who want to join Uganda People's Congress, just like there are many tens who tell me they can't join because they can't join a party without a leader, and some of them say they certainly can't join a party whose leader is one leg in NRA, another leg in lack of clarity.
And who is known for continually not following the constitution of the party.
That inclusive. And so it's dense, the opportunities for this country. But you're asking me about opposition. So from that perspective, what then is happening in other political parties? The other political parties' challenges, as you would say, I know you'll be talking about FDC. I really hope that the leaders in FDC are able to resolve their matters urgently, amicably, and together. I have warned again and again, including in this program, we do not need further divisions. We don't need more political parties in this country. In fact, we need far less. As opposition parties, actually, in terms of the active 5 opposition political parties, my argument is that if it was possible, we should reduce that number by 50%. But obviously, regardless, we definitely need to have an urgent leadership that emerges out of this opposition, where the men and women as serious voices. It does not necessarily have to be a voice from the leading opposition party, but there must be a voice coming from the opposition that has got capacity to galvanize opinion in this country, including assurances to people in NRA that in the event that NR is not there and such a leadership is given the privilege to govern, that they would govern for all the people of Uganda, including for NR and protecting the lives and properties of all people in this country, including people in NR, including NRA suspects. Even if they're Mabati suspects, they need to have a sense of guarantee that a mob justice will not apply to them. So I think that's really what is required from a leadership point of view. So FDC, I hope that they're able to review that. They're still very lucky. Maybe they should look at us and see how it can be bad.
Yes.
Because for us, the longer Milton Obote was kept...
And the DP really.
Indeed. But let me just use UPC very deliberately. The longer NRA and their friends in DP and others kept Milton Obote away in exile, the longer they did that, the older Obote got, the more some of his key members, senior leaders, and faded off. Some of died, others went off, others going into NRA, others gave up. So that fast forward to where we are, if you look at the core of our quality active leadership, the numbers are not very large. Large enough to beat any other political party, but not large, not as large as it would have been, say, 10, 20 years ago. So FDC still has even an elders council, and in that elders council, men and women with relative energy, experience, some of them with the resources, regardless of, whatever. Of course, many of them are breakaway NRA. So while for us we're eating muogo for breakfast, they were eating bread, wherever that came from. So they're still relatively okay. They better make the best use of that. But I have also said that in the event that their situation become irreconcilable, for those who were from UPC and those who feel that UPC's values are consistent with theirs, they're welcome, and we will welcome them, and we will rehabilitate ourselves together so that we're able to rebuild this country. But I don't want any major opposition party to have a major issue, whether it's, in this case, FDC, NUP, DP particularly, and just as UPC, because those are the four main opposition political organizations. Just like I wish our brethren and sisters in NRA very, very well. The only thing that I wish them very well, the only thing I don't wish them very well about is that they should continue with the domination and control of national politics, including the high table, and breaking the legs of other people, stopping other people's rallies, and particularly using our national resources. That I don't wish them well. That one, my prayer for the night, NRA guys, guarantee you don't get good prayers from me at all.
But now, and I'm glad you did speak about what happens the moment this thing prolongs, as what has happened to the EPC. When you look at all of these parties, and now, of course, currently the FDC, what do you think causes those divisions? Aside from, of course, the said infiltration of the ruling administration, what do you think causes the divisions in those parties, that the rift goes that far, that some have to break off, and of course it's weakened when it does that?
No, differences exist in all political parties and organizations around the world, and it's natural. Political parties and organizations, by their nature, will be, at least for UPC, I don't know about others, will be broad church. And the most common thing normally would be either grievances or ideological coherence that brings them together. Even if it's a political party of the left, like a progressive left, center-left political party like Uganda People's Congress, there will be members who are slightly more to the left than left of center, if it makes sense. And then there'll be people who are slightly more to the right than left of center. And some of those contradictions will happen. That led in part to the expulsion of our founding president, Ignatius Musazi, in 1959. Musazi was expelled as president of Uganda National Congress at the time in 1959. It was an ideological split. Some of those things pitted people like Kale Kaihura's dad. And I must shamefully say that I have that association with Kale, although he went on to whip our people in the streets of Kampala. But his dad was a founding member of Uganda National Congress, and ideologically rooted, as it were. So there's a contributing apparent to the body politic in this country. And so those conflicts were there. These guys re-emerged in 1960, and they were coalescing around again center-leftism at the time when the big debate was about communism versus the other. So you're either to the extreme left of policy, so you align yourself with the Soviet Union, will be called all sorts of names, like Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan had the cheek to call Mandela a communist simply because he was an African, an African controlling our resources in Southern Africa, and that people like Jonas Savimbi, who I don't understand, I hope you're not one of the people who are pouring accolade to him. Anyway, may his soul resonate on a piece. Jonas Savimbi, not Jonas Savimbi, I beg your pardon, Mangosuthu Buthelezi, Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi, excess right-wing South African Zulu leader who was revered by Anglo-American conservative right, almost anti-African, but through the right of polity. So that will happen. But anyway, later he joined Mandela's Rainbow Coalition government, and Mandela was quite generous to him, gave him the Minister of Home Affairs, things like those will happen in political parties. Fast forward to where we are. 1964, Delegates Conference of Uganda People's Congress, we had a shaky taste on our party. We were 2 years into our government, and Gracie Bingira beat John Kakonge to the Secretary Generalship of Uganda People's Congress at the time. That caused major issues. It would appear that even today, sometimes when I meet, and I must say this, sometimes children or grandchildren, some of these people, they take it so rather personally, some of these things, almost as if they want to hold Obote responsible. Obote was merely president of the party, and the issue was whether or not Obote supported one side. Obote did not, but Obote, of course, is much more to the left of politics, which is basically much closer to John Kakonge, not necessarily Ibingira, but Ibingira was elected, or managed to get through as a Secretary General, so Obote had to work with him. Not surprising, Ibingira went ahead and pierced Obote in the back, because from his right-wing thing, external forces, talk about Museveni thing, were able to use him to cause a split in Uganda People's Congress. So point is, what about these things in the political parties? The issue, therefore, is not about divisions in political parties, but how these divisions are managed. Post-67, Obote managed to hold UPC together until his death. But even then, in 1994-95, the Cecilias sort of broke away. Cecilia was expelled, but they formed their own mini UPC, and there was a party helping to bring them together in 2004. So these things do happen. Point is, where is the party constitution? Now I'm answering you long. Where is the party constitution? What does it say? What kind of leader do you have? Is it an accommodating leader, or somebody who's a me, myself, and I, strong man person, and almost like a mini dictator within a democracy?
One man army, like,
in a kind of. I don't want to say, So some of those things are there. Obote never was that. If anything, Obote was accused of being too nice to some of the people inside his own inside the party. Just like these NRA guys, you can't please them. Some people say, had it been the hard Milton Obote, possibly the Musevenis would not have survived Luero in many ways. So those will happen. What do you do when differences come which are ideological? Ideological differences, when they actually do exist. Unfortunately, in the messy manner in which political parties are in Uganda, unfortunately, in the manner in which most political parties are on the continent, they get rather difficult. In my experience in the British Labour Party, for which my support is lifelong, I hope. I hope they don't do things that would make me, but yeah. So I've got lifelong support there, the sister parties, but yes. Systems do exist that if there is a major policy issue, and this is conference season in Britain, in fact, Labour Party conference is this weekend, when particular policy issues are, local branch parties have a say, and they vote and debate, and I've chaired those meetings, and they can be very rigorous. And I can tell you very rigorous, and there's no rigging. Particularly parliamentary constituency parties are extremely powerful because at the constituency level, that's where you send delegates to the party conferences. These things are debated seriously, and they're open. Those are opportunities. Across the country, then, you will get a feeling that if there are policy issues around money or policy issues around working with other political parties, these things will emerge. The leaders of the party will almost certainly know in the evening when branch meetings have taken place that across the country, what was the mood in branches. So they will get these feelings. But most important then, when you come to national party conference, which do take place, by the way, every year. In UPC, you remember, our delegates conference will be called ADC, Annual Delegates Conference. But Museveni has beaten us so much that you know now, not only can we call the Annual Delegates Conference, even these guys who thieved our victory 3 years ago, they've not even held one. So the constitution now been changed that we should have at least 2 delegates conferences every year, so no longer annual. But anyway, so these party conferences, when you go to them, you get delegates from the constituencies, the members of the Central Executive Committee, Central Executive Committee, then the policy forum. At the delegates conference, trust me, they call them party conferences, debates do take place and voting do take place in the open. The leader of the party, the serving leader at the time, will always have a bit of a way because they have a bit of a win kind of stuff. But generally, they're defeated. They're defeated. But I've also seen, including a Blair meeting, that you go and attend and there's a particular position, maybe Britain in the world debate or something to do with reforms of childcare, something like that. Maybe they put a position. These matters go to the party conferences. People debate these things. And when they lose, when they sense that actually delegates have a strong opposition against, they'll back down. Now, that is the democracy that I don't see here, that I hope will ever be able to happen. Now, when situations happen like that, in other words, I'm giving a long answer, you can resolve internal party differences in a democratic way through party structures, party organs, party systems, mainly usually through the delegates conference. But when some of the differences then become personality, those then become management issues, surely. But management issues will only happen when you've got disciplinary organs, when you know that the various party structures do work, when you know that there is a culture, unlike the NRA, culture of debates and conversation, when I can say, Roger, I'm not amused by what you've done, and you will not consider that as an abuse on you, you will take it as a feedback from Mr. Ochieno, rather than a criticism, and that terrible Mr. Ochieno kind of guy. And these are cultures that we need to be able to develop in Uganda. Finally, because of the 38 years of NRA killing of political parties, killing of democracy, and then the emergence of politics, me, myself, and I, personal merit politics, and then the stealing in of monetized politics, money now plays a very big role in politics, generally. And then when you reach a situation in which money plays plays a role, and you look through even some of my own UPC across generally, and then you find people, paying allegiance to particular individual leaders because they can get merely allowances from them. I have known people who have their mouths shut because they're civil servants of the party and they don't want to lose the opportunity for allowances. I've known people who built on loyalties simply because once upon a time they were party civil servants and they got an opportunity to be able to go and attend a conference, either by the Conrad Foundation or Frederick Hibbard Conference. Something as simple as that in Kampala, just to go and take tea, or once in a while if you're able to get an opportunity to get an allowance, a travel allowance of 50,000 shillings for airtime, or sometimes some of them get more, and or International Republican Institute event somewhere in Kampala. Or for that matter, maybe just going to an Oxfam meeting or this iPod meeting. I've known people who nearly changed religion simply because they've got an opportunity to go and attend an iPod meeting. Now, that is politics for monetized politics, but that is also about politics of poverty, but also that's the politics of patronage, starting with at the top with Mr. Museveni. I have met in the last 2 weeks many, many people who are failed politicians, people who lost in elections, but they're now in positions because Museveni has appointed them. There are stories doing the rounds about the crisis in foreign missions, where political rejects from Nagongera are now mean ambassadors determining your destiny at the biggest diplomatic commission abroad.
We're going to get to that, but before we leave this issue, I wanted us to get a direction. Most of the parties, opposition, I want us to dwell on the opposition right now because there are people, a lot of people think they have the alternative vision. But most of the people and the parties seem to have blurred vision, to have lost direction. And even the people themselves, when you listen to some of the people talking, the opposition leaders speaking, some people will feel like they have a famous saying in Uganda, "Utaina cha tugamba," because they have literally had the same.
Meaning what is That what?
Utaina cha tugamba.
Okay.
Because they've had those discussions again and again, and they have not become fruitless. And even themselves, amongst themselves, it's getting even worse. How do you expect, and how do you think Ugandans should support a vision of a changed Uganda, or Uganda that is growing to a better direction, if the people who are purporting to lead that change are not even doing the best themselves?
I had in part alluded to that earlier when I was talking about the course of leadership. So that's what I'm saying, we need a voice. And when you talk about leadership, it normally be about leadership around something else, and then therefore at the same time somebody with a sense of clarity to be able to, to rally around a critical mass of the citizenry around key issues, and those normally be about issues. Maybe we should just come here and talk about ideology and politics one of these days, because it might appear very biased whenever I say these things. That it is actually true that of the many political parties that we've got, and political parties and organizations in this country, I am not being unfair to others by saying that I know that UPC is the political party with an ideology, with a very clear set of ideals. I can tell you, I can tell you, no,
it doesn't seem to reflect right now. Because even when you move among the people, you have the ideology, that is right.
No,
but the ideology in itself, without ethics and character in the leaders, does not exactly reflect. It doesn't benefit.
No, but it does not take away the specific point about ideology and ideals. Just to help in your question, we have got challenges in terms of including how to deliberately articulate this issue. That's not the point. That's not my point. That said, I don't know what any other political party in this country, and all the leaders are my friends. I don't know any other what they represent, and I keep on saying that. And I know sometimes some of my colleagues think I'm being unfair to them, or possibly being unreasonable. No, the honest truth is that I don't know what NRA stands for. The only thing they normally say is that they're multi-ideological, whatever that means. I can tell you in average Mwiri English, I don't know what that one means. I've said that DP, by and large, is presented as sort of a political party of the right. I have, based on my own appreciation of political parties and ideologies, and political parties, organizations, and ideologies, I can't say more than that. I don't know what FDC represents. I mean, what FDC's ideological grounding is, except I know that globally, because that's the campus I can use, they associate with the conservatives of, say, Europe, in this case, particularly conservative of Britain, in which case, by and large, they're allegedly a conservative political party. But they stole objective number one of Uganda People's Congress, one Uganda, one people. Did you know that? No, seriously, because that was yes, no, because the fact, and people watching should go and check these things. Go Google. This is a very good friend. Objective number one of Uganda People's Congress, aims objective says to build the Republic of Uganda as one country with one national parliament and one government. So these guys get one. So they put on. So that's a problem, because I'm helping to answer your point. Yes, so yes. In other words, I'm helping to agree with you that we in political parties, we've got problems. So we take responsibility for confusing your viewers, your audience. Our friends in NUP, I genuinely don't know ideologically and that's an absolute fact. I know they've stolen our raid. Now, raid normally will be associated with leftism, radical leftism, and when people say radical, people think radical is bad. No. It's actually, is actually another misconception. You can see the sort of link because they have conversation with the EAF of South Africa. EAF is a center left political party. they sort of would be our sister party, just like ANC would be our sister party in South Africa. But is that what NUP stands for? What in terms of ideologically, what exactly do they stand for? You know, and I don't want to help begin to teach writing their programs and their aims and objectives for them, because that's a very expensive thing, you know, to do. So for this, I think I'm going to be shy. So basically, I have no problem. I don't have an answer. Problem though, that should not necessarily mean that they cannot govern. That should not necessarily mean that they cannot have programs that will convince the citizens of this country. FDC, by and large, managed to convince, almost certainly they would argue, the majority of Ugandans, at least 2 times, between 2001 when Besigye stood, because it has been alleged that Besigye effectively won at least 2 elections.
Yes.
So if that's the case, they did not necessarily need to say that this is an ideological thing to run with it, like
As
this is
long
what we
as
stand
they
for.
represent
But
the-
if they managed to pursue the election, to be fair to them, they did that. NUP is a big argument suggests that Chagulanyi almost certainly, possibly, won the 2021 elections. So that's neither here nor there. Your point is, though, would it be any easier if these parties had clearer ideological routines? Absolutely. And the other part of the question would be, in the event that they did have that, and that they had leaders who related with many of these things, I think it would be easier to persuade the majority of the citizens opposed to NRA, the majority of the citizens who are sort of undecided normally in terms of opinion polling, but particularly a critical number of members and supporters and would-be voters of NRA, that it is actually safe for them to switch and vote for these people, whoever they are meaning to vote for us. Number 2, that is actually the right thing to do to abandon NRA because we are an alternative. Now, that is the challenge facing us as political opposition. So you realize the ideological question is one, but 2, generally, it's slightly more than ideology. Unfortunately, I'll take you back. That is very much about the question of leadership in our opposition. And as I said, leadership not as Ochieno as president of the Uganda People's Congress, but leadership, and that is what Ochieno as president of the Uganda People's Congress would do on the basis of that position within Uganda People's Congress, exemplarily, but also be able to extend that across the board, across all the if you like, opposition political parties, bring them together on a common agenda. It does not mean that our differences don't remain, including our different terms of programs don't remain, but really that the common agenda is this, and that common agenda is one that serves our interests and the interests of all Ugandans, including people who used to support NRA, who support NRA, including those who vehemently oppose us, but in the event that we won, we will have won for everybody else. That really is, I think, the critical thing. And particularly at a time in which Museveni continues to blackmail NRA, especially when it comes to our good friends in NUP, that vote NUP today and Kampala is burning tomorrow. Now, I'm not a spokesperson for NUP. It's up to them to also assure all Ugandans that is not the case. But I would suspect that maybe that is slightly much more blackmail from Mr. Museveni than actually would be reality.
Do you think that most of the issues that happen now in internal politics of those political parties, do you think it's a problem of the ineffectiveness of the political party organs and structures internally that cause those kind of problems? Because it's one thing to have ideological disagreements, which is fair.
That is true.
I think that is even necessary.
It's healthy. Yeah.
It's healthy for party growth. But is it also a problem that the opposition parties lack the internal structures, and therefore that causes all of this rift that happens?
Some of them do lack those structures. Some of them lack, you're right, some of them lack those structures. Some of them are just inexperienced as political parties, particularly, and it's a matter of fact.
What do you mean inexperienced?
NRA has ruled this country for such a long time.
Yes, almost 40 years now.
Yes, that, you can't believe that you were born when NRA had been more than acceptable 2 terms, isn't it?
Yes.
So that is how long NRA has been in power. Meaning that getting anybody younger than Ochieno with experience in a democratic process is almost zero. Can I repeat that?
I want to understand the context of that. I think it's important, but I would like you to expand a little
It is
bit
so
on that.
long that NR has been in power that the last time we had an open democratic space and an elected government was in July 26th, 1985. So anybody who was like 20 in 1985 and was involved, say, in Makerere University UPC branch or Chambogo University DP branch, something like that, those are the last people who had experienced democracy before parties were banned. So Museveni and DP and the Ukelos came in and overthrew the government in July 1985, July 27. After that, Museveni came and banned them in 1986. Since then, until today. So by the time political parties were opened, there were hardly many younger leaders like yourself with experience of engaging in the political process. So meaning, actually, the culture of democracy had already almost certainly been killed. So talk the experience thing, the new political parties that have since emerged, where would their leaders have practiced some of the things that I was likely to practice? I've told, I think, your program or another. I think I told your program that actually the very interesting thing is that once Museveni arrested, detained, and tortured me and forced me into exile.
That was in the
1987.
87, yes, 87.
I was very lucky, in a way, one, that I ended up in Britain, which is an English-speaking country. So some people actually get into a very terrible situation. They go to Congo, they don't know French, and Congo, wherever, and then you possibly sleep in a particular corner by the trench. I was sort of lucky. I did not go into the heavens, but it was okay. Number two, it was English-speaking. I met there refugees, people who didn't know how to speak English. I was there, I had come out of university, so I was lucky. I was not people who had to go, chini before they could find themselves then to go to do their little things. But beyond that, as I said, I joined the Labour Party amongst my campaigns. So I joined a functioning center-left political party, with systems and structures. So in a way, the Labour Party contributed to my growth. And then number two, I was in Britain, which was a democracy. So I saw how the media operated. I saw how when election is taking place, how the BBC as a national broadcaster would be obliged to give equal airtime to all political leaders. Here, when UBC airs, UBC thinks it's doing Ochieno a favor. UBC, you guys, they think they're doing me a favor when they call me to UBC. No, UBC, you guys, let me tell you guys, you are not doing me a favor. It's my basic right, but you're lucky I haven't taken this seriously. Because the last time I was in UBC was nearly 2 years ago. And the only reason I've not been to UBC recently is because it's political. UBC is not an NRA property. It's probably Uganda People's, all the people of Uganda. And by the we Uganda People's Congress, we founded UBC, including all these things, including the buildings, which these guys sometimes can hardly maintain. So, and I say it seriously. So UBC doesn't do any Ugandan a favor. So they pick, whatever. Okay, other private networks, you could say the Aga Khans, although they're eating our spaces at NTV, NBS, wherever. So those are private media. So you can argue, although we also know many things about them. So better say that, So neither here. So public broadcaster like UBC and public broadcaster like Urban TV and the New Vision, it's their obligation to cover Ugandans fairly. So when political election times come, they should give Chagulanyi, Museveni, Amuriat, whoever is the leader of ANC at the time, and of course, in the event, whoever is the leader of UPC at the time, equal time. But in the course of whatever is happening at the moment, like for me, who goes to basically help give them free information, that's some of their, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
It's cheek. I get begged by the best global media to give them an opinion about Congo. And UBC thinks they're doing me a favor by me going to appear there, kind of stuff. But I am saying this to tell you that I learned these things. So I saw that this is what, how the media conducts itself. This is what public broadcasters do. This is what political parties do. This is how you see when somebody has a new political party has won power, how they try to bring the country together. When a governing political party has attained a fresh mandate from the people, how they present themselves. They care and they do these things for themselves. And so therefore, how political parties operate. So you go to a local branch meeting and how you're welcomed. You go to a local branch meeting and when there's a dispute about a policy, how the chairperson conducts meetings there. This is what I'm trying to say. How members' opinion are sought. And if members petition the leadership of the party, whether locally or nationally, how it's responded to. So, no, I was lucky I learned that. Now, here, as I said at home, we had Chan Kwanzi, as a learning thing. But, I don't know what you know about the
leadership academy.
No, whatever it is. What do we call the curriculum there is.
Yes.
So generally, therefore, FDC emerged. So you realize that some of the early people, fantastic people in FDC, the Constituent Assembly, the early legislators in 2006, 2010, they're saying some of those things, the guys were brilliant. They're brilliant because many of them are people who would have been crops or people who had lived in a free Uganda. But 1985, they already, maybe some of them were civil servants, public servants, some of them were already politicians. Those guys have faded off. So now we have the Norbert Maos, you see, who are brilliant, very brilliant people. but they generally, 1985, they're possibly changing their tracksuits yet. Not as bad as the other guys. Changing their tracksuits, yes. So that's the experience I'm talking about. So some of the current political leaders, and I'm saying it with respect, because I see it even in, generally don't have experience of leading, managing political parties and organizations.
Let me ask you, sir.
Yeah.
And just in line with the experience that you're talking about, when the late now President Obote became leader of Uganda during the independence, most of them were young people.
Oh, that's true.
And most of them had relatively lived in a situation that wasn't democratic at all. They turned out to be good leaders at that, you would say. I think you can fairly argue that out. So does it still suffice that even these people who were born or who started practicing politics later during the years of the NRM, therefore lack experience to be able to effect a momentous and democratic
It is very good you ask that question because it clears the air. Because that means that you had actually misunderstood me. And it's very good for the listeners that and viewers that you got it. Now, I have actually said on this program that is NRA blackmail is an absolute nonsense that must be dismissed. That say, in this case, Robert Kyagulanyi is too young to govern. Mildred Madu was Prime Minister at 37, and he did a fantastic job. No, I am not talking about the age and the fact that these guys are young people. I am talking about the experience. You're absolutely right. It is the climate under which people lived, and the climate under which people live, and the leadership that is enabled. Most of these people grew up under an NRA monolithic dictatorship. Most of these people grew up, some of them grew up in the camps. Most of these people grew up seeing Museveni, that is either Museveni or nobody else. Most of these people grew up in the nonsensical NRA propaganda, which must be criminalized. Political party is bad, NRA thing good. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
So in others, actually, many of these people grew up believing that, but even these days when you have, and I've got to do media rounds, and so sometimes you meet NRA people, some people in NRA, I don't know what happens when people sometimes go to NRA. I can't understand it. So someone goes into NRA and said, oh, that's why we told you that actually this movement thing should have continued because political parties are bad. People still talk that now, and they talk that to justify Mabati. That's the problem. No, it is about the culture rather than the age. In fact, I was trying to tell you that some of the challenges of leadership I'm talking about, you realize I didn't mention UPC. Our only problem is leadership. We have an internal culture in Uganda People's Congress. Let them tell you, actually, if you could get the way our young guys were shaking the funeral on Saturday, I don't want to go too much, it's amazing. Yes. So for me, in my own team, I have people who are below 30, young people, many of them who have known me for less than 1 year. Put them into a debate with 10 guys in NRA. The NRA guys will literally run and leave the space.
But now, why doesn't that now trickle down to most of the places? Because again, the people who, okay, I understand that the ones for NRM.
Internally is a culture. That's what I'm trying to say. So for us, I'm not saying, for us, we are able to do that. I'm not therefore not saying that it means that things are okay for us. I'm saying as a party, we are relatively better. Culturally, we're okay. And as I said, don't forget that even when parties were banned, we as UPC continued, even in this difficult Uganda, to nurture and guide and train leaders. No, we do. And that everybody else knows. So we did that both at home and abroad. And right now, we continue to do that even when we're headless, basically. And that's what we're trying to do. But my question to you is, what is happening with why the opposition are struggling to do that? I'm simply saying many of them are inexperienced. But also on the other hand, maybe just to conclude, that's just the culture, the climate doesn't allow. Right now, it's not a time when you can say that Uganda Christian University, Mukono, holds a public debate on matters of regional policy, and that representatives of DP, UPC, NUP, NRA, who, as student leaders in that university come and they talk and they debate and students laugh and they make whatever. It doesn't happen. You see, that's what I'm trying to talk about, discussing East African community. As I said, I'm a senior judge in the national inter-university debates. And I was telling another program the other day, I believe that the whole thing has improved substantially, in part because myself and at least two of my colleagues, one of whom is a former lecturer, I joined into it. When I first went, I couldn't believe that I was listening to university students having a national debate. So these are cultural things, and they're important. So that's why I'm saying this country genuinely needs a complete overhaul. And then for political parties, that's part of the problems. The quality of leadership, the environment doesn't permit, and as I said, particularly many of their own leaders would not have had an opportunity. It's not in a way to criticize them. I'm simply saying they've just not had an opportunity to experience many of these things.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'm going to hold you just on the last one. We're going to go in for a very short commercial break. When we come back, I want you to start from that culture. What is stopping the culture that is from the inside to spread out so that people can see that this is what UPC is made of, and this is why we should be able to support them? And how do we spread that even to the other opposition parties to make sure that they are
very keen to that, actually.
They're sort of realigned to make sure that they have a clear direction and sort of a clear vision. Things seem to be blurry right now. So we're going to go in for a very short commercial break, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Roger Suriabu. Don't leave the station. Just wait for us just a little bit. We'll be right back.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Hi, Rogers. Can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes, it can. Although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So,
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Beautiful people, you're welcome to the Snap Talk with your girl Teddy Tanjo every Saturday right from 6 to 7.
Naku zino twajirwa flat tami. Tukyayambalako ku lugoye obutukwata.
Wajja n'akubody shaming. Speak up. Gendo ba confronting. Obagambe ekyo kye mukola si kirungi.
Towerabira nti tuli wano ku the alternative Digitalk. Mukwano gwange gwali topic kiri wandyagadde twogereko. Is it about family?
Nga tize tata wange amanyira nkola n'obuvunanyizibwa nyina bungi. Era agezaako n'anyamba yambako yanda.
Naye kumukubira kumubuuzaako. Noga mama we bali kunzaala.
Is it outside family? Is it society? Oh, could it be relationships?
Come and visit me. Simanyanga I miss you bichi. Especially embeera y'obudde si nnungi.
Naye n'omuntu akwagalira mu season yaba takwagala ze nkubuulira.
Just be commenting at topic yona gyandyagadde twogereko tujjako tujogera kwano ku the alternative Digitalk ku share enganzi the Snap Talk.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Thank you very much, folks, for joining in. My name again is Roger Studiawe, and we're here with Honorable Joseph Ochieno, who is a leader in the Uganda People's Congress, and we're trying to make sense of a number of issues that happen in the opposition of Uganda and how prepared are they for the leadership should any of this happen at any point in this time. And when we broke off, he had a point that UPC has an internal culture and one that is sort of quality if you speak so. But what I'm trying to understand is how do you make it a point that therefore this culture that is internal in the UPC and one that you have grown and held onto for so long can spread out to the people themselves to give them some sort of belief that you have what it takes to lead them, but also spread some of it to some of the other parties to make sure that they have a clear vision and direction of what Uganda leadership should be like.
We don't have the budget that, is it Frank from who was the last NR minister for, is it national guidance?
It's currently, I think it's Chris Valyomo.
Chris, my good friend Chris. You see, so no, that's not our job, but I get your point. No, so in practical terms, any political party can only do thus far. So even inside UPC, we are not able to do enough because we are surrounded by a national quagmire of politics of self-interest and politics of intrigue and politics of chasing power. I can tell you that, as I said, that I came from Arua, and part of the things that I was thinking about on my way back, with my small team, you look through what we had and you see how wasted opportunity, we have, considering the internal squabbles, considering the lack of focus to deal with the bigger national agenda. So it's very important. So when in such kind of situation, it's not possible for you to do your job well. But even then, even if we did extremely well, we would only then be able to reach out to only members of Uganda People's Congress, or then potential members. We would not have then the capacity, because I said we don't control the national narrative, so nor do we have access to the national institutions. If I was able to go to the national broadcaster every week, or if I was able to be part of the news items every week, and there's no reason why I shouldn't be, You see, that every week UPC has said this, Ochieno has said ABCD or whatever kind of stuff. There's no reason why UPC, I hope they did, cover the event in Arua, one of the biggest events in West Nile in recent times. That would rub into the ordinary citizen access. If UPC does that, if Urban TV and New Vision does that, if then the independent media also takes responsibility and the Play Fair did that, if then yourselves then go ahead and did a lot more of that, you would, so that can rub in, and I still believe it does rub in. And I think I've actually contributed fairly. I thought you were going to give me a medal. That actually even appeared on your program, that I hope that every other time that most of your viewers are not necessarily UPC, I'll be delighted if all of them became UPC. But that every other time I come here, I'm hoping that I'm able to speak to young people, and that to be able to to teach ourselves good manners, learning from some of our own experiences. That really is the slight way of doing some of these other things. I was giving examples of the inter-university debating programs in which I've been involved. I put a lot of my time on those things because I basically hope that out of that I'm able to nurture leaders. But I want to tell you with privilege that in the last 12 months, as a result of a young person I've nurtured, they've gone on to become university. This is a young Muslim leader, a young Muslim girl without prejudice, who, in one of them, who had, didn't really have my sparse self-confidence and things like that. Out of our interactions, turned around, became a big example and a leader in their own university, came in, did a particular program, and has since actually won a fellowship abroad and gone to abroad to America and back. This girl told me within the last month when she came back that when she arrived, she landed at Entebbe. She thought she had moved to a new world when she traveled out. And then when she landed in Entebbe, she said she thought she had gone into the past. She said this to me when she came to visit me at my own home. And she thought that, well, I had changed her world. That plus many people can talk about. Now, that, not many of these guys are necessarily people who are in necessarily UPC, but these are basically young Ugandans whom I talk to. Many people, after your programs, they make contacts with me. Maybe one of the things that your program doesn't do is to put maybe our Twitter handles. Of course, we can't put our private telephone numbers on spaces. When I go to public space, people stop me. People ask for my contacts. We talk about it. So we do that. Problem, that's why I'm trying to say that I don't have capacity nor would even an organized Uganda People's Congress, even if I took over Uganda House tomorrow, which I deal is our national headquarters, which I should, that we were to do that. The rubbing, when it becomes a culture, my leadership, the leadership of our colleagues in other political parties, and how we conduct business, and the youth in our own parties, they buy into these things and then they rub. But the most important aspect of this is the national leadership. It will take the person who is in State House, and I hope Mr. Museveni leaves that space so that a responsible Ugandan citizen takes over that position, that office. When the president of the state and the nation, leads, the country follows. So it is up to the top to change tone. We talk about Magufuli in Tanzania, who took a tone and killed corruption. You take a tone, and right now some of the investments in Tanzania has actually radically changed even after his death. So in other words, Tanzania has fundamentally changed in less than 8 years. So that's sort of the cultural thing. But of course, here you're trying to talk about a background against which this is conversation is taking place. Where said parties were banned. These guys came, stayed in power, entrenched themselves. They're still in power. And worse, not only are they in power, but they're extremely almost pathologically opposed to alternative views. To the extent that I also meet many young people who say they fear to talk. Many young people who don't know that the answer is to engage. Many young people who don't know that the opinion they hold matter because they cannot put it to test, even sharing it with other colleagues. There are people who think that when we discuss potholes and why not, they think that is treasonable issue. They don't think it's a basic right. That basically, when you begin to say, all these potholes, I don't want to talk about politics.
Yes. That's true.
So then, if that is the case, that's the situation, and you link it up with fear, it's not surprising we're where we are. So now, I'm not quite sure whether there's something that, from our perspective, we can do beyond what we've been trying to do. Meaning, look, trying to encourage our colleagues in other political parties and organizations that they should play their part, trying to encourage them that their leadership and together with our leadership, emerges in political opposition to stop being defensive, stop abusing their constitutions, stop abusing their rule books, stop abusing the mandates given to them by members. Imagine like whatever's happening in my friend DP's, Manobad Mao's DP. He's the leader of the Democratic Party and is now in NRA. I don't know whether it was mandated by the delegates conference or something. No. So a young person who would others be DP, who had possibly even joined DP, says, well, what's the reason? How do I bother? What's the bother? You know, because people go ahead and they just do what they've got to do.
And now in that line, like you say, there are people who are going to feel like, you know what, it's not even worth it anyway.
Yeah.
Because the leaders themselves
Very
are not,
risky,
they are not living to the words that they speak, so to say. How do you think in that line, we are going to do away with person interest as opposed to party? Because that seems to be a common voice across most of the political parties, even the NRM, the ruling one. Right now, its organization hinges on one individual. If that individual is not around, it's possible you could see another mess also being lined out here in the Kampala streets. How do you think now we can contribute towards building party interest as opposed to personal?
During a break, your fantastic, beautiful producer was having a conversation with me over exactly that. And that raising a very important point that political leaders now, particular opposition, she was particular about opposition leaders because the burden really changes on our side. You know, opposition leaders talk too much, maybe she was even accusing me, talk too much about blaming NRA and disregarding some of our own fundamental self-interests, personal interests, sometimes our own inadequacies. Some opposition leaders are just incompetent, but they want to pretend that they're goddish just because Museveni is possibly worse, kind of stuff. You know, so what I think we need to do is to continue doing what I'm trying to do. You know, continue to be the force for good, continue to be the force for change, continue to be the positive force, continue to lead by example, continue to mobilize a critical majority, a critical number. I think we just need to make sure that within our own political organizations and across the country, using the fantastic work that you are doing in the media, that we're able to galvanize and mobilize young people, encourage them to participate, encourage them to engage, encourage them to organize. I've also said that young people should continuously critique the main political parties, UPC, DP, ANT, NUP, you know, FDC, you know, and including NRA, yes, the six organizations particularly. Critique them, and notwithstanding whatever else happens there, establish if their values are coherent with yours. Forget about their leaders. And if they are, and this is where I disagree with my good brother Mugisha Muntu, we had some function somewhere where he thought that, well, if you don't agree with the existing political parties, form yours. I don't necessarily believe so. As I said, ideologically, you know, political parties globally, in terms of political theory, they're into two. So political parties of the right and of the left. You can only have so many. So if really from where they are at the moment, my own view is that the political party of the left is UPC. And if the values of UPC chime with you, regardless of its leadership, but at the moment the leadership under myself will be very impressive. Join. Come and make noise and point at Ms. Ochieno, say, Ms. Ochieno, this is not your party, this is my party. Because these political parties and organizations, just like this country, belongs to the citizens, not to the leaders or to the rulers. So I also believe, therefore, so if there are people who believe that FDC is their political organizations and NUP is their political organizations, and your young members, particularly young members, take a position and simply say, Obwana leader, we don't agree with you on this. Obwana leader, we don't agree with you on this. My view is that actually young people should mobilize and organize. Mobilize and organize around every respective political organization you believe you chime with, and then be the change. It is your critical number through the structures and the institutions of the political parties that will be the change. What I'm trying to do is to make ready as many young Ugandans as possible in the UPC for leadership, for people who will be able to be in branches. Yesterday I had meetings with one sub-regional group in West Nile on my way here, and my instructions to them was to prepare that even in their sub-region, I have my own listings of people already that they should prepare that, over the next year or two, under my leadership, some of the district leaders, I will expect them to let go of their positions, to become advisors, to allow some 20, 30-year-olds to come in and take those positions, and those guys be able to guide them into those leadership. Now, if you're that 20 or 30-something-year-old, you're not going to be on the fence. You need to be able to be down there so that you show your relevance also. And it's only through that you'll be able to the other side will be able to have the confidence that they're able to give you the mantra. I think leaders in this country need to be able to be pushed, and political leaders across the political divides will need to be pushed. But also young leaders that emerge need to emerge showing us the culture that they're not driven by self, they're driven by their convictions. Now, that's a difficult one. I think I'm being very unfair to average 28-year-old boy who has been surrounded by these guys who do politics of pocket change. And Mr. Ochieno is telling them now, don't go for pocket change. And he's seeing eminent people crossing into NRA doing night dancing and things like that for shortcut. But no, I'm simply saying to you that, look, my own experience in political parties, in political party in UPC, was not driven by money. And the leaders, the founding leaders that Roger was talking about, were not driven by money. It's no wonder that they gave this country the best that they had did. So if young 28-year-olds today are interested in a future tomorrow, they should be able to design that future. And that future can be possible without necessarily.
It's also likely because of the frustrations of the leaders existing at the moment. Because quite honestly, if I stand right, I don't support any particular party where I am right now. But you know the reason why? It's not because I don't want to belong to any one of them.
Yeah, but none of them has got
but none of them hold any of the ideas they profess. One will come in the camera and speak one thing. Yeah. Tomorrow they will be found doing another thing, totally different, unrelated. And so you feel like, what is it that I'm going to do? And at the end of the day, you know what happens? Another one is going to feel, you know what, if this one I'm able to procure some 20 acres of land from them, I'd rather go with them for the sake of what I get from them, not for the future of the country or the future of the quality of politics that we're going to be grounding.
And that is my burden of responsibility, to persuade the 28-year-olds that notwithstanding those, we should pick the political organizations and then become part of the change. Yes. For me, maybe I'm lucky because I've been an activist since my early 20s. And then today, maybe the activism is a very uncool thing, you know. People are going to watch you whatever in down to go and for you, you're talking these other things, really boring. No, but it's not boring because I've got grandchildren and I've got children also who are still relatively young and the future, so I am concerned about them. But not only that, for us in UPC, it's not about our farmers, it's not about our children. We believe in the great-grandchildren of this country. And so when I go around the world and I see what's going on and when I appreciate the realities of the mess Africa could easily be in the next 50 years, it's very urgent that we mobilize young Ugandans and young Africans actually who are able to speak the language that protects this continent. And so therefore, the 20-something-year-olds and the 30-something-year-olds in Uganda need to come up and take position and begin to train themselves and organize themselves for leadership in this part of the country. Because these are people who must be called to be leaders in the next 10, 15 years. And they're not going to be called from the pubs. They're going to be called from the trenches of body politic. You know, for me, I was very lucky, as I said, I started early, and I was lucky I also started in the right political party with the right political leadership. At the moment, it's messy. Join the right political party and start from there and begin hitting your heads down there. By this, very, very nice to challenge some of this. Some of these leaders sometimes can shout for you on television, but some of them can be very, very soft. They're not as strong as whatever you think.
As they appear.
No. So you guys, you know, you're a somebody, as Jesse Jackson would say. So, you know, if you're 24 and you've read many of these other things, political theory, no, come and practice them in Uganda People's Congress. You'll be surprised that you're able to silence Mr. Ochieno when Rogers can't.
Do you think we used to have iPod? And I feel like somehow we tried, it may not have achieved so much, but I feel like it sort of gave hope to getting an advice across the board on how certain things need to be run. Is it possible these days that you'll have one opposition party blame or rebuke another on certain ways that it does its business? For correction purposes, of course, not just by malice and all of that. And do you think that's something that we can try and do in this country?
I don't think the business of a political party to blame another. So the duty of the political party to advance is its agenda. If anything, I think for me, you realize that I'm not only a leader of the UPC, but I also once in a while critique other opposition parties. But I do that by virtue of my trade and profession as as a political commentator, I do it as a media commentator, but I also do it authoritative as the leader of Uganda Post Congress, urging my other colleagues to wake up and do the needful. And that's really the only thing I can do. But beyond that, it's neither here nor there. I think I still say the only thing that we can do as a political position is to put our houses in order. And the only thing that we can do is to become a good example. Interestingly, politics, because it's about competition of ideas, it can also be very tribal in quote. Meaning, therefore, that actually most political parties, they would rather, if their opponents are weak, to continue, enjoying the weakness of the opponents. And that's why the sensible political position, if the opponent is weak, is not to focus on the opponent, focus on your programs. I think the reason why you don't see it is that maybe not many of us have decent enough programs to sell to your young viewers, and nor in the other, on one hand, but also on the other, maybe some of them, as I said, we're still struggling. But maybe I'm also being very critical and possibly unfairly. NUP just did a cut-around thing, and it wasn't a bad crowding thing. FDC has got its own problems, but we also shouldn't forget that in the last 15 or so years, they gave themselves a bit of a run for their money. DP has given us a run for our money before in UPC. They did in the early 80s, respectfully, I must say. Also, the only thing is that they did it through parliament, but also at the same time in the bush. That was an error. But forgave them. But DP was the last respectable opposition of an elected government, because they had nearly 40%, representation in parliament. That's the parliamentary system. So that was quite respectful. How much they used of it will be left for objective historians. Although, getting objective historians in this country this day is very hard. Can you imagine, depending on the mustard seed as the authoritative text? So that's the thing, really. Yeah.
And now for the other one, I wanted to get from you. There's this common talk that you'll find about political elitism and this kind of notion, that some people just have read too much books that they lose touch with what the actual ground asks or deserves for that. I have had some people say that some of the leaders, the party leaders, you can have like a political party, some of them are sort of on the side of, we want to do things the hard way. And there's this one who says, we want to do everything by the book. And then this is how things are said to be done. And this is how so and so and so, like they're following the protocol and procedure. And some of them have said to downthink others or downplay them. In one of the parties that are existing, I will not mention, I think that would be malicing them, I have some sort of friction because of that particular issue. How do you think that parties themselves can unite around a common agenda without feeling like this one is so much an elite, this one is less of an elite, therefore they resonate with us as the common people? For the future, of course, of the party and the impact as such.
Within a party or across the party?
Within the party, mostly.
All right. No, political parties are a broad church. The political parties, as I said, will have different strands of membership. Within a progressive left political party like UPC, as I said before, there will be people who are slightly more to the right and slightly more to the radical left. And it's not a problem. And as I said, if we're discussing education, you can manifest your leftism. If you're discussing health, you can manifest your rightism by advancing, say, for instance, private health care. I am opposed to private health care as Ochieno, so I'm a progressive left. I believe that so-called health insurance is profit motive in the health system, which is unacceptable. I believe in universal free access to health through public taxation. And so if there is somebody who's ideologically conscious in UPC who takes a contrary view, we shall disagree on that. That's sort of the nearest to those kind of strands. But of course, you talked about the elitism thing. I know there are some people who have entitlements because, for example, there might be sons of professors, and some others, they might come might have come from Kamocha. Me, I'm the son of a grade 1 teacher, but I also lived in Kamocha slum. I lived in Kamocha slum. Did you know that?
I didn't know.
No, I lived in Kamocha slum.
Which year was that?
You know, 1984 or something. Yeah, I lived in.
The whole of Kampala was sort of a slum at that point, so.
No, I lived in the slum, Kamocha. So leave me alone. So okay. No, but that's a fact. Okay. I lived in Kamocha slum. Could you make that your headline? Live in Kamocha slum. So I lived in Kamocha slum. So no, I think fortunately they're not. I really don't know many so-called political elites in mainstream opposition parties these days. But I think I know what you're talking about, or some of the kind of individuals you might be talking about. Actually, many of them tend to be these career briefcase new people. And many of them will tend to be people who are driven by self-interest, me, myself, and I polity, rather than necessarily that there are people who are conflicted by ideology. And many of those people who are really very much self-centered, people like Museveni, they will think nobody else matters. So you can even imagine Museveni, because Museveni is really not. Traditionally, he wasn't an elite, was he?
No, he wasn't.
No, he wasn't. But, he, so now where do you put it? So no, I think what you're talking about still is about this personal merit thing. And that's really part of the problem in the political party. So I don't know which political parties have got 5 leaders who are eminent national figures, but they speak the same language. Then you can say that these are the broad power guys who are pushing an agenda for this political party in a particular direction, and they're ideologically coherent together. Remember, I already told you earlier that part of the problem is I don't know where ideological leanings are. But to make it simpler for them, including those guys, if only they would say that, well, we want electoral reform, and then, okay, we want to make sure that it's work to work, and 5 key things, and then they start with those ones. You could identify those with them and then define the kind of personalities they are. I don't think, therefore, that the problem in causing the weakness of political parties are anything else, away from the infiltration from NRA, which is a fact. Many of them are questions of clarity of leadership. Many of them are problems about the circumstances around their founding, who some of these political parties, how they're founded. And I think many of them are really about the personalities of the people who are leading them. And those people are letting down members of their political organizations, and they're letting down the opposition, and they're letting down the people of this country, because this country badly needs leadership. Again, out of my recent trips, both in the North and West Nile and others, people are looking for alternative leaders. And just like you, Rogers, people are looking for reasons why they should support us in opposition political parties. And they want us to convince them that we are coherent. They want us to convince them that we are authentic. They want us to convince them that we have an idea. They want us to convince them that we can clearly provide an alternative to this NRM mess. And they want us to convince them that we will never betray them. And they want us to convince them that they can grant us the burden as guarantors for their futures, meaning that they can invest their future in our hands. Now, that I think we substantially struggle to deliver. For me as Ochieno, I cannot say that I possibly at the moment would provide the best of that because I don't have the platform. But possibly in the event that I was clearly leader of the party, I think Ugandans would find it reasonably okay, reasonably easy to believe that I can help create an environment in which myself and other like-minded people were able to push this country in a direction which is alternative to NRA, but one which serves all the people of Uganda, and one which is not false, one which is not a quagmire.
I wanted to ask about how are you going to go about that now? Because I understand that Jim Yakin also presented himself as a candidate for the next elections as a flag bearer for the UPC. I wanted to get your direction about that. But This week, when I was having a conversation with one of my friends who does watch this show, for that matter, actually, thank you so much. And they were asking me, the UPC, Mr. Ochieno comes and then he's telling us how UPC has been a model for politics in Uganda. But we also had Obote being president, and then of the party. And then there was Mama Mary at one point also as the president of the party. And now we have Jimmy Ochieno, a son of the president Obote. Where does he get now the moral authority to talk about MK and Musevenism that is happening around? But if you so wish, you could talk about that one. But more importantly, I wanted to understand how are you going to go about the position of Ochieno being the flag bearer for the UPC in the next elections, and you being the rightful owner of the leadership.
Just like maybe guys in NRA would say that Muhoozi is a serving soldier, and the struggles of Todwong was a serving soldier, we will not declare him, we know Muhoozi's father is our boss, kind of stuff. No, the position of Ochieno goes back to what I say that I'm waiting for, court ruling. No, court ruled against Ochieno definitively. Ochieno is going around basically to fulfill his missions and plan and deals with Mr. Museveni. And that is an unfortunate fact. From my perspective, the only thing I can do is to follow the constitution of the party. I don't believe in overthrowing governments, like the way NRA and DPD do, and others. So I cannot go and break into Uganda House. I've petitioned courts, and I'm waiting for a definitive ruling on that. I am still quite confident that court will rule in my favor. But number two, I've also asked for a permanent injunction against Jimmy. And once court rules on that, then it will have dealt with it. But I can't stop Jimmy saying whatever he wants. I can't stop him doing whatever he wants. I don't have those powers. Nor can I stop Walubiri being in the hole where he is. Do you know where he is? Do you know where Walubiri is? Why don't you guys go to the police and look for him? He declared himself president of UPC on the 28th of December 2020. So I can't. So for the moment, I can't deal with those except by those bold steps I've taken. But beyond that, what I can do is to be on these programs. Beyond that, what I can do is what I'm doing, meaning I recruit, I talk to members, I visit communities, I go around the country within my limits, and whenever I go, wherever I go, I don't go as coming from Uganda House. I go as a leader who has been denied an office, who's waiting, but I go as a member of UPC. So I continue with my obligation as a member of Uganda People's Congress to market the party and get members for it. But I go also as a member of UPC to try and show other Ugandans that we actually are good people. So I go to continue engage with other opposition parties and encourage them where they are. I go around the country, I still talk to young people. I motivate, I nurture, I grow them, and I support them, and I train them. So that is really what I continue to do, and I also continue to go and make sure that I encourage many more young Ugandans to get involved in politics, but also continue to go around and meet my friends in the NRA and tell them 40 years of privilege, and especially privilege by force, is long enough. Please let go. Give it even 5-10 minutes.
Privilege and plunder.
And plunder. Both. And by the way, you guys, some of us tell us you do Muhammad. Muhammad will not be happy. And definitely those of you who do Jesus, whom I know, my man, my Jesus, there is absolutely bad manners. Please stop plundering, and allow yourselves. So that's the only thing I can do from that perspective. Now, your other question was about the
Mama and then the son.
Okay, that's an important question, and I think it's a pity that we don't have the time to deal with that, but instead we're dealing with the usurpers and maybe thieves of positions. Mama Miriam was elected not because of what had died, and Mama Miriam was elected president as an interim president. And it was in the time when Obote had died, and the party, I think, was in shock. It was not a unanimous thing, but a critical number of party members felt that we needed someone who would unite us together, bring us together, and in the interim, help see the party in the transition. It had nothing to do with Oboteism. And maybe, as I said, because we had been in exile for such a long time, and because we had had a depletion of members, and I think they thought that maybe Mama Miri would help present an interim leadership where young emergent leaders like ourselves, who are the next tier, would possibly prepare ourselves. And indeed, when Mama Miri came in as leader, she was reluctant, unless she was talking as a politician, because she told me and two others that she would only accept the position on condition that the three of us had no objection, and number two, that on condition that she was allowed to serve only 4 years of a 5-year term as an interim leader. That is not the sign of a Mama Miria who was imposing herself, a Mama Miria who chose to become a leader because she did not, a Mama Miria who was pushed by her family because she wasn't. Definitely, I believe that some people may have pushed her for their own interests, that I can say that. And definitely, that is not a Mama Miria, the wife of Obote who wanted his wife to be, because Obote was already dead. But I can also tell you that in the event that Obote had a say from heaven, he possibly would not have recommended Mama Miri. This is what I'm trying to say. In this case, Museveni is alive, kicking, controlling State House by force, and facilitating Muhoozi and Open, and even discussing by Chwezi and calling his son that don't joke with my boy, he's an avenger. You see what I'm saying? So that's very different. Jim McKenna, again, is him. To be fair to you, apparently, as of 2015, he had got majority district nominations. So that means a critical number of UPC members had seen it fit to support him. But that majority was contested by Olara, who was then president, to the extent that he set up a committee to investigate this. And it was that investigation which seems to appear that Olara may have had the view that they're going to carry out fresh elections because some irregularities has taken place. So as of today, I cannot, as Ochieno, say for sure that Jimmy clearly won the majority because it's a disputed majority. So in which case then if he didn't, then it's also not fair to UPC to say that they elected Obote's son. Now, but of course, in the event that they elected Obote's son then to replace Olara, Obote's son had not replaced his mother. Obote's son would have replaced Olara. So maybe I'm trying to defend UPC too much. But you see what I'm trying to say? And then in this case, again, you would not say therefore that UPC was doing it. Because as a party of democracy, you don't say that I'm going to have Roger and I'm not going to have Rogers because Roger is so-and-so son. I think in a democracy it should be able to happen. But I get your concerns about the culture. I also want to say on this program that I was not particularly keen on Jimmy, for instance, replacing his mother. Because Jimmy was a candidate with Olaro, with myself. I was a candidate in that election. But I did not stand against Jimmy. I stood with Olaro because by then, by the time I declared my candidacy on 13th of September, Jimmy hadn't. I was surprised when Jimmy declared his candidacy, in which case to replace his mother. I can tell you I did not support it, partly for obvious reasons. Number two, which is very important to UPC members, I think where sentiment is aside, strategically UPC members would have known, sensible UPC members would have known that in the event that Jimmy freely, legitimately replaced his mother, we were not necessarily going to go to the polls and win a majority with Jimmy. We are going to get a very critical number of Ugandans who are going to say that's a monarchist, a family thing. But because of our superior programs, it's possible that people would have looked down, looked away from that. Because people argue political charisma, where a political party is popular, like the Perons in Argentina and the Yendes in Chile at the time, certainly the one that people use commonly as the Congress Party of India, it is possible that would happen. Basically, leadership that emerges through popularity and as a result of the charisma of either the founding leader, something like it would happen. Museveni must be smiling, but it doesn't apply to him. You see what I'm saying? So no. In short, Mama Miria was elected in the end almost fairly, quite overwhelmingly, but for those purposes. So it doesn't apply. And then secondly, Jimmy has never been officially elected as president of Uganda People's Congress.
Yes, just ran Olaro Tono out of office. Anyway, so I have this last one, and then I have a question from one of our viewers. Are we learning from the causes of rifts in the political parties?
Are we?
Are we learning from the causes of these rifts and differences and divisionism that are actually breaking the pattern, not just about ideology? Do we seem to learn from them? Because it's happening for one party, and then it happens to another party, and then it happens to another party.
I don't think actually we are enough, in part because it's a cultural thing, and as I said, in part because I think we are suffering from the aftermath of ban on political parties, and as a result of NR being too long in power, and so therefore basically stifling alternative views. That is not being defensive as opposition parties, but that, as a matter of fact, as I said before, that impacts and that affects. And so, as a result of that, we would learn if we had sobriety in political parties amongst the leadership, amongst the top executives, amongst the core membership, and then there's open public debate, which is an open and fair. There was a time when you couldn't criticize Besigye.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
And you didn't need to be a member of FDC. So there's some people who, like for me, I'm UPC. There's no way in which I will support FDC, and so there is no reason why I should be charitable to Besigye, but I'm very responsible. You see what I'm saying? Now, if then I went ahead and criticized Besigye materially, the sensible thing for members of FDC would say, oh, that's a very serious individual, because I'm a UPC leader, taking this position. What exactly is he saying? Pick my criticism as a feedback, and do internal review. People didn't do that, and in many cases, so it was a hostile environment, particularly for people who were not FDC. So at no time were particularly FDC activists recognizing that FDC did not have 90% support in this country. And like what I said, even if they had 95%, there would be a 5% proportion who will criticize you in the newspapers or in the open conversation or on Twitter. Fast forward more recently, a culture came, and I think it sort of still exists in a way, where, it's quite discomforting in some spaces to criticize Robert Chagulanyi,
Yes.
And and I've seen some of this in the social media, and when I see these things, I feel really, really sad. But worse, that some of these responses sometimes go to the extremes, sometimes they get personal, and then sometimes they're within the spaces and limits of the leaders, respective leaders, either those top leaders themselves, the individuals themselves, or their leadership to rein on these people. And then you find instead there's a bandwagon. That is extremely anti-democratic. That is very unfortunate. That in part is what I'm trying to talk about, the lack of experience. But maybe for us in UPC we are lucky. Our body has been abused. The guy has been abused.
And I think that we can also give to the current president. I think he has also allowed people to say whatever they want. It has not felt like you're abusing Jesus when you speak about it.
No, that's not true. Museveni has just calmed down now. Museveni has just calmed. Museveni, check with Museveni's friends in Tara. Museveni was an extremely intolerant person, as well as in entire school. Ask the Bianyimas, of course. Winnie may not tell you what you want to hear. But no, Museveni Boniface has been... So anyway, as well as entire school, Museveni was very intolerant to alternative views. I was telling another television network the other day, including how the guys who eventually formed FRONASA where people who include my late former member of parliament, Osinde Gwangur. So these are guys who thought themselves the groupings of a radical progressive left, and the thing narrowed down to two individuals, Museveni and Kategea. And because poor Kategea could say, yes bro, kind of stuff, nothing else. But anyway, that's sort of the lesson for the political position. Look, I think that it's urgent that the opposition political parties and their leaders woke up and galvanized around the common agenda, and that the common agenda should not be only about change and only about, quote, removing Museveni. There is quite a lot that we need to be able to do, and in my opinion, if we did those and we did them well, it might make it easier for us to pull, particularly much more on the fence, average, much more open-minded, progressive Ugandans. Young, beautiful doctor at 36, female. I'm not sure she likes some of the punches that are thrown around. A very busy lawyer that is rolling around her new law firm at 37, and she wants to give her time for change in this country. I don't think she wants to come into muddled water, but at the same time, that's also what I'm trying to challenge them. Those are precisely where they should be. Those are precisely the people who should come out, give 10% of their time, and be part of this thing, and to try and be able to make sure that they lead properly.
All right. There's one Sembate who's following us live from Karamoja, Uganda. Thank you so much for being a part of the discussion. There's quite a lot of them who are saying just thank you for the show and all of that. There's Ethan Mwino who says, thank you for the show. I'm following from Ankara. I think that is Turkey. Says the opposition lacks a unified front. How do you think parties can overcome internal divisions and present a cohesive alternative to the ruling party?
I don't have a panacea for internal cohesion. I've been battling. I won the leadership of my party, in December 2020. Yes. I still don't have an office. So, so that is hard, but I'm trying very hard. One of the things I'm trying to do is to talk more to the party leaders and party members. But I've found it actually much more interesting talking to fresher party members, and making sure, therefore, that they also come with fresh ideas and that they feel a sense of ownership as party leaders of tomorrow. In the event then that we're able to have that resolved as a political party, from my point of view, as I said, in all these interactions, I mean, I don't know how much I can say, I have bumped on at least 2 political party leaders from other political parties. In fact, on Thursday, I had a fantastic conversation with a critical leader of FDC. A very cordial conversation we had. And so there is space, from my perspective, there is space. I can't wait for that formality to be able to engage all my colleagues in leadership. But I'm also saying that even in that informality, I'm able to do it. But some of them will say, but who's Ochieno? I sometimes feel very isolated when some of them don't recognize the internal challenges, and possibly they want to enjoy, they think they're enjoying whatever's happening. I've said that before. So I have had, for instance, cases where events take place around oppositions, and I see it as a by the way. So sometimes when I see it and I think people are doing it like that, either less for the party or less because they want to pick who of the 3 of us are real leaders, I can't help that. So in other words, still telling you that, well, I have an idea and I agree with you. I don't know whether my colleagues do understand this enough. Because I think something which is really urgent is that not many of our opposition leaders see that anything that happens in Roger's studio, if it's not them, then it's not in the interest of the opposition.
Yeah.
And if it's not them, then Uganda has come to a stop. That is the problem that we need to overcome as opposition, and that is the problem that we need to overcome as opposition to persuade Museveni to be able to ensure that this thing becomes a reality. That no.
I have a testimony to that. I was very disturbed very recently. I listened to one of the political leaders in one of the parties saying they cannot share some of their perceived solution to some of the existing issues that are facing the country, because when they share, the incumbent will pick those solutions and use them, and he will take the credit. So it sort of shifts. It's not even about the people themselves. It's about, I need to get in the power myself to be able to do those things. Otherwise, people will not benefit. So I do agree with you on that one. And as time is
if you don't mind, intellectual rigor suggests that if you hoard knowledge, yeah, you're a real suspect.
Exactly. So,
no, you don't. There is so much that NRA has done and continue to do, which we say they've picked from us. In fact, even on Saturday, the funerals talk about it. I used my Sunday column to challenge during COVID that they needed to open strategic centers for COVID. 2 weeks later, Museveni announced the opening up of 15 COVID centers, emergency response centers around the country. And an MP from NRM whom I'd never met called me to attribute it to myself. I've not gone around bossing around Kampala.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
We provide alternative ideas to our national challenges on behalf of our citizens. We don't do these things for ourselves.
Thank you so much. And as we are going to come to a close, I'm going to give you a few minutes. I want you to speak. What do you make of our 70 people delegation to the UN?
That's criminal. When I first saw that, I actually thought it was comedy.
Yeah, it's a joke myself.
And there are many things that normally happen in this country. Then they send it to you. Then sometimes when it's been sent to me by my friend James, I think James wants me to feel happy because he knows I've been very depressed. So let me hear there's something happening bad with the NRA. So no, it's criminal. One, the number. 2, the money is involved. 3, what are these guys generally going to do?
And some people
4,
were actually some of the leaders' spouses, and others purporting to be advisors.
But then some of these leaders have got so many advisors. Have these leaders gone to school? They all went to UPE.
But they must be advised on almost anything and everything.
I don't know, because I don't want to make it too much of a big thing in detail. Except that I think Ugandans, we need to demonstrate. We need to organize a demonstration in Kampala. We need to hold Museveni to account. We need to hold Nabanja to account on these matters, and we need to hold, particularly the speaker, but we need to hold Museveni and Nabanja to account on these things. I think it has not got as much media coverage and attention as they really deserve. That is one of the biggest scandals in recent times. I promise to remind Museveni about it for the rest of our lives.
Okay. As you also say your conclusions, I think we've come to the end of the show.
No, just to say that I thank you always, for your time. It takes me 3 hours to come here because I come from the other end of Kampala, and it is saddening how choking bad traffic is at 4 o'clock, and you need to just be the other end. A journey that should take 47 minutes. I see how these guys with their sirens, cheeky, want to come and try and pass by. Sometimes you want to get out of your car and then go and give them a special session of lectures. The Kampala the Kampala traffic is terrible, it's unacceptable. I think it's one of those things that also Ugandans need to have a demonstration about. But most importantly, the sooner younger Ugandans got up and got more interested and took charge of the political direction of this country, the better. And the longer it takes them to think that some funny God is going to come and rescue them, the more likely that by the time we all woke up, there will be no treasury, just like there will be no Uganda house in New York. Certainly not the Uganda house in London, which UPC gave you guys and you're now busy abusing. They will no longer be existing. So, I think we need to take action now. But generally, no, the future of this country is possible. When you go around and you meet some young Ugandans out down there, they're fantastic, great citizens. All they need is leadership, they need direction, they need enabling, and they need to be granted hope. And for that member who came to me on Saturday night and professed himself a member of the Congress of the Republic of Uganda. No, the future is It's exciting. I will not let them down, but as I said, I'll do the best for them so that they're able to grant hope and possibility to my grandchildren.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, and everyone. Thank you, folks, for following the discussion. I do take most of the two things. One is because the discussion today was primarily about the political parties themselves and the opposition at that. And I think the most important thing is that there should be structures. I think that is very, very central because that determines how it performs outside. But also, walk the talk. Don't say one thing and do another thing. The rest of us will just be left at a junction. We do not know which direction to go. And that definitely affects the future. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope you've learned one or two things about today's discussion, and I hope that you spread it. Please do share that link with someone else. Make sure that it goes around so that other people can also learn from some of these things. We do appreciate you, sir, for always making the time to come and tell us and talk to us, especially the young generation, to be able to get some of these concepts, because we've not had, again, like you said, we've not had an opportunity to live in another area to understand what, to have a point of comparison, what is working on what is not.
Or reference. Yes.
Or reference, yes. So thank you so much. We do appreciate very much, and we hope that your efforts will also pay off in the long run. So thank you so much. Have yourselves a very good night.